We are less than a week away from the final four college football playoff teams being selected. It was a wild weekend in college football, folks. A couple of top 10 teams lost. Let's see how it affected Pigskin Pete's rankings. Let's go. Everybody, if you're new here, make sure you hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button. I do these college football videos and live streams year-round. There is no off-season for Pigskin Pete. What a wild weekend. For those of you that are new here, this Pete's Top 10 is not a projection of the playoff. It's not a projection of the AP. It's just my opinion on where the team should be ranked. It's been pretty close, especially, say, 6 or 7 through 1. With the playoff committee's rankings as well. A few things have been different. I have yet to put Coastal Carolina or BYU in my rankings all season long because I don't think that they belong there. A lot of people are thinking that Coastal Carolina should be in the top 10 based on their record. I'm here to tell you they're not going to be in my top 10 today, and the reason is I don't think that they belong in the top 10. I think any of the teams that you'll see in my top 10 or the playoff committee's top 10 would beat them, and probably pretty badly. They struggled with a mediocre Troy team this weekend. They almost lost that game. I'm not no offense to Coastal Carolina. All right, they're a good football team for who they are and who they play, but that's about it. Let's go ahead and put up 10 and 9 here. Now, I do want to discuss with the elephant in the room as I put these two up here on the screen is the obvious top 6 Florida loss, and of course the Miami loss too. The Florida loss obviously affects the playoff picture more than the Miami loss does. The question is, now that Florida has 2 losses, if by some miracle they were able to knock off Alabama this week in the SEC championship game, would they still be considered for the top 4? We'll see how far they fall tonight in the actual playoff rankings. I tend to think that the SEC champ is getting in even with 2 losses. There's a lot of people making the case that this loss that they had against LSU was the death nail for their playoff hopes. That is possible. Although I think Alabama is going to beat Florida by 3 or 4 touchdowns at minimum. All right, so Oklahoma and Iowa State, both of these teams are making their first appearance in my top 10. And again, they moved in there because Miami lost and Florida lost. So that opened up 2 spots and the other teams got shuffled around a bit. Nonetheless, Oklahoma and Iowa State, both 2 lost teams in the Big 12. They're going to play against each other this coming week in the Big 12 championship. Neither team played last week. They had a sort of a bye the same way that Notre Dame and Clemson did in the ACC. So this would be a good game here. Oklahoma is probably the most improved team in the top 10, top 10 or top 15, say in the second half of the season. They started out the season awful, which is why they never made it into my top 10 until now. Nonetheless, I have Oklahoma and Iowa State at 10 and 9. Let's take a look at number 8, Georgia. They took and made light work of Missouri 49-14. This is also another team that's vastly improved. And for one very obvious reason, they have a quarterback that can move the ball downfield finally. If it weren't for the blunder that they made early in the season with Stetson Bennett, and we still don't know the real story behind this, the reason that it took so long for them to put JT Daniels in there, even though he was medically cleared to play, I would love to hear the story behind that, because it may have cost them a game against Florida, and it may have cost them a chance to play in the SEC championship, and that means it may have even cost them a chance to get into the playoffs. If I was a Georgia Bulldog fan, I would be highly pissed off about this entire season. Now, the good news is, if you're trying to look at a bright spot, the future looks bright. Well, assuming that JT Daniels comes back for another year next year, I think that puts them as a preemptive, obvious top 10 or top 5 team preseason. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So Georgia coming in at number 8 with an impressive blowout win over the Missouri Tigers. Let's take a look at number 7, Cincinnati. This is where Cincinnati has been in my rankings all year, and I've said this is where they're going to stay. They've either been at 7 or 8. They're not going to move up or down unless they lose a game. It's not their fault they're stuck at 7. They were able to schedule who they were able to schedule because the Power 5 teams, for the most part, were not willing to schedule out of conference. Cincinnati is stuck where they are stuck. A lot of people would like to see Cincinnati have a chance at the playoffs. The problem is you have to go off of strength of schedule, resume, who have you beat, and let's be honest here, they haven't really beat anybody of note. They certainly haven't beat anybody that's currently in the top 10, so it is what it is. Sorry, Cincinnati, you're a great team. Hopefully you get a New Year's 6 bowl game and you get to see, we get to see what you look like against a good Power 5 team. But it is what it is. Cincinnati's stuck at 7. Great team, though. And, of course, Luke Fickell is at the top of many people's list as a potential head coaching candidate in the Power 5. Let's take a look at number 6, Indiana. Indiana sitting there with 1 loss to Ohio State. They play Purdue this weekend. This last week they didn't play at all. So we'll see. It's unfortunate for Indiana that the Big Ten changed the rule to let Ohio State get in there. Although I think it was the right move for the conference. I do not blame the Big Ten for propping up their best teams. It seems to be what every conference is doing at the moment. So Indiana's a really good team. However, their playoff chances have gone out the window, and hopefully they will get a good New Year's 6 bowl game. Now, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and put up 5 through 1, and I'll explain all of these teams. Nothing has changed since last week in my top 10. Obviously, Texas A&M sitting there at 5 with 1 loss. The Buckeyes sitting there undefeated after playing 5 games. Of course, they had the Big Ten championship this weekend against Northwestern. Clemson number 3 with 1 loss being 2. Notre Dame, the Irish, undefeated with a win over the, at the time, number 1 team in the country, Clemson Tigers. And, of course, everybody's favorite football team, Alabama. I don't think there's any argument that Alabama is the best team in the country. They are the team to beat. Enough said about that. Clemson and Notre Dame play this weekend. The question is, how can both of these teams make it in the playoffs? The answer is the only way that happens is if Clemson wins. So if you're one of these teams like Texas A&M on the outside looking in, looking for that 4th spot, you need the Irish to beat Clemson. Otherwise, both of those teams are going to get in. I don't think there's any 2 ways about it. I guess the only scenario where the Irish didn't get in is if they got beat by 50-3 or something, which of course is not going to happen. So a Clemson win gets both in. An Irish win knocks Clemson out and probably to a New Year's 6 bowl game or something like that. Number 4, the Buckeyes. The Buckeyes are at the center of a lot of controversy this week. Lots of things said by a lot of different people, including Dabo Swinney. I don't think he actually took a shot at the Buckeyes as much as he did at the Big Ten, basically saying, I don't see how you leave out a Texas A&M and put in a team that's only played 6 games. He basically said what everybody was thinking. I don't know why this is such a big shocker to anybody. And if you're one of these people that thinks that Clemson and Dabo Swinney is scared to play the Buckeyes, I have some oceanfront property in Nebraska for sale for you. That's not what it's about. I guarantee you, if the roles were reversed and the Buckeyes were sitting there with 1 loss and A&M was undefeated with only 6 games played, the Buckeyes would be screaming foul if they were ranked ahead of them. So don't tell me that you wouldn't feel that way. Having said all of that, I have the Buckeyes at number 4 in my own rankings because I believe that they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. That's what it's supposed to be about. Who do you think the best 4 teams are? Pigskin Pete's humble opinion, the Buckeyes are one of the best 4 teams. But I do understand the gripe from some of these other teams that have played twice as many games. I understand it. A&M sitting there at number 5. Again, A&M needs Clemson or Ohio State to lose this weekend, and they could possibly find their way into the playoffs. We will see what happens. It should be a fun weekend. Make sure you hit the thumbs up and subscribe button, guys. I will see you guys tomorrow night at Tuesday at 7 p.m. live for the College Football Playoff Ranking Show. Have a good day. Pigskin Pete is checking out.